Fine. Second between. Perfect. And look, if people sign up, they didn't show up. But the fact that we have 250 people sign up tells you that the interest is there.
Yeah.
And we're going to send this out afterwards. But also, we should send out your contact.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, unless you want, you could also give it for those who want to reach me.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
You could even put chat. If you get some work from this,
that would be great.
Oh yeah, actually, see it.
Good afternoon. Don, maybe we can lower the music. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 5th session of our ongoing series of active aging convenings. My name is Stuart Himmelfarb, and along with David Elcott, I co-founded the Active Aging Network with a simple goal: to change the conversation about aging in Jewish life and to make it easier for Jewish professionals and volunteers to meet and share vital information as we explore ways to engage or re-engage Jews in Jewish and civic life as they move through the life stage that extends from the end of midlife careers into older age, and eventually retirement and beyond. Our speaker today, Tamar Prager, fits the objective I just outlined. She is changing the conversation about Jewish life and about aging and blending some really interesting aspects of the aging process, and we are honored to present her. At this time, though, I want to thank our partners, all of whom have been with us from the beginning of these gatherings. Don, could you switch to the next slide, please? I just want to share the names of those partners with you. First, the Jewish Federations of North America. Some of you may know they're otherwise engaged today at their General Assembly. And the Marlene Mayerson JCC Manhattan and Wexler Center for Modern Aging. Our other partners, who we also thank, are the Academy for Jewish Religion, CCAR Press, the Cohen Center for Modern Jewish Studies at Brandeis University, the Cummings Center in Montreal, Dorot, the JCC Association of North America, the Jewish Grandparents Network, Havod V'Nichum, Network of Jewish Human Service Agencies, One Table Together, Reconstructing Judaism, Shomer Collective, Synagogue Village Network, and the Union for Reform Judaism. Next, I want to ask you just two requests. One, please be sure you are muted. Everything just works better for all of us that way. And second, if you have any questions as we proceed, please put them in the chat and we will do our best to get to them. At this time, then, it's my pleasure to introduce you to David Elcott, my partner and the co-founder of the Active Aging Network. David retired from NYU's Wagner School of Public Service, where he was the Taub Professor of Practice. He's now a senior scholar at Columbia University's Center for Justice. And with that, I turn things over to my good friend, David.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here together and have the opportunity for us to explore really an area that 2 years ago when I met Tamar, I got so excited and said, someday we're going to make this happen, and this day is today. Tamar will get an opportunity to tell you why, what, how, meaning, and something that we are convinced you will be able to bring back to your communities to find different ways to be able to actually explore what she's going to talk about, explore ways to bring that into organizations and perhaps even into your own life. So the way it's going to work is I'm interviewing Tamar and giving her the opportunity to speak. So Tamar, my first question is, and I'll be taking notes if any of you, please do have questions or comments. I'll be taking notes. You'll see me writing as those come in. So Tamar, you're a young mother. You're building your own nest. You're just building it now. What brought you to the work of unbuilding, of downsizing, to even think about this as a professional area of engagement?
It's a great question. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's a question that I get from most of my clients. So some of you may know, probably most of you don't. I actually was a nurse practitioner and a public health consultant before doing this work. But to keep this brief and relevant, this type of work, helping people determine what is important to them and what is not important to them, has always interested me. And as we know, everyone has their zones of genius, the areas of life and skill sets that they're very naturally good at. And one of mine, for whatever reason, is being able to kind of make order, but also see the simplicity within chaos. And for a lot of people, of course, that is a very difficult and a very overwhelming, burdensome task. So before I got into healthcare, I took a job when I was kind of figuring out what to do. And I worked as an employee for this company that decluttered and helped people downsize. And the amount of fulfillment that I got was extraordinary. And I, over the years, kind of figured out what it was in particular that lit me up. And I think similar to healthcare, it's an opportunity to help people during a very vulnerable period in their lives, a moment of transition that for most people, as I said, is very overwhelming. Later on, I created a business, kind of a more low-key version of what I do now. And most of my clients ended up being Jewish because I'm Jewish and I move in those circles. And so by word of mouth, I ended up in a lot of Jewish homes. And I realized I can't do this. My ego was taking over, my ego was driving the bus. And so I put it aside for many years. And I started a family, and I was looking at that time to leave healthcare so that I could be at home and really a reliable, present mom for my kids. And so around the pandemic, I really used the opportunity to pivot completely from healthcare into this. And I went full force and created this business and mostly work with people in their homes. Occasionally, I work with individuals who are business owners. But that's kind of how I got into it. And I will say that my ego is no longer driving the bus, and I am focused on really doing for myself what I preach to others, which is to figure out what is essential in your life and to follow what lights you up. So that's kind of how I got to this place.
Great. We have four kids. They have families. They live in apartments. There's no way that they're going to be able to take the things we have in our house. They have no place to put them. My wife's idea of downsizing is anybody she invites to the house, she says they should just take something, whatever they want, and slowly but surely we'll have nothing left. That's it. I don't think that's the way to do it. We have to find an alternative way. So I'm thinking now, leaving home, the home in which so much happened in your life, celebrations, for most of us, bruises, emotional moments, very, from births to weddings to sitting Shiva for a family member. What have you learned in kind of these liminal moments of life, these liminal moments of transition when kind of you're seeing your whole world in front of you as you're closing up the house that you have before you move on?
I've learned quite a bit. And I would say the first thing is that this type of transition, either staying in your home but significantly decluttering and needing to go through the process of letting go, or actually leaving your home, is so overwhelming and emotionally wrought for most people. I obviously clients only come to me when they're at a point where they realize they can't do it on their own. And I guess I've learned that even though it shouldn't be this way, we are human beings and we beat ourselves up. And so a lot of people carry a tremendous amount of guilt, of shame, almost burdensome nostalgia that prevents them from moving forward and detaching from their possessions. And so what I've learned is that you have to bring a tremendous amount of patience, a tremendous amount of respect for the individual and for their relationships to their possessions. And I often tell clients right up front, I'm not an organizer. I'm not here to beautify your home and to tell you how to manage your things. But more importantly, I'm really here to try and help you discern at this point in your life what matters now. And I also have learned, frankly, that, and this makes perfect sense, people's identities as parents, as maybe another type of caregiver, as a professor, as a doctor, whatever type of professional. But our identities are wrapped up in our possessions. And so it's a very delicate matter when we are at this phase in life where we either need to, for logistical purposes, we need to move, and so we need to let go of a lot of things, or for other reasons. Perhaps our beloved has passed on and we want to move, or family members think we should move. For whatever reason, we've reached this moment where we have literally thousands of decisions we have to make. And what I mean by that is every possession we have and the decision about whether or not to hold on to it, that's a decision. And so people typically have hundreds or thousands of those decisions to make. And so it's a very overwhelming time. And so I've learned that people who can be, masters in whatever domain, are almost starting from square one when it comes to this, which is to be very honest with themselves about what they can do and what they're unable to do. And that's kind of where I step in.
I was wondering, actually, you have stories without giving the names, but do you have any stories that in thinking about them kind of grabbed you, or maybe kind of tell the story of what you've experienced, and what you're analyzing and describing, but actually
Sure.
in real lives?
Absolutely. So there's one family in particular whom I worked with for months, actually, many months. And what I learned from them was that too much can lead to a mental health crisis for a family. So they were not quite empty nesters. They were living with their children, and the sheer amount of possessions they had was very challenging emotionally for one of their children. And so they were at this moment in crisis. They were actually a very Jewishly involved family, very knowledgeable Jewishly, and it's interesting because I worked with them a while ago, and had I put on a Jewish frame to this process, I wonder how it would have shifted it for them. But anyway, one of their children was in crisis, and they brought me in, and they had to figure out how to learn the skill of letting go, how to understand that they can still feel their love for people while not needing to hold on to everything. They can still feel the love that people had for them without needing to hold on to everything. They could still live a rich, beautiful Jewish life without holding on to every sefer that they ever bought, any book that they ever bought, or, they could still be seen as erudite people without having, the entire Norton Library collection. And I think there was a lot of identity work and a lot of work figuring out what their family needed in the moment. And I think that's really the hardest thing for people. And this is actually where I think Judaism ties in, and we can talk more about that. But Judaism, I think, does a brilliant job of bringing us to the moment, to the very moment when we say brachot. We're offering gratitude for what we taste, for what we see, for experiences, etc. And so, as we'll talk about, I think putting a Jewish lens on this could be very helpful for people to bring them to the present and to have a more mindful approach to letting go.
Yeah, going back to the story. So in this case, it sounds like many of the things involved were gifts that people had gotten that could be from family members, from friends, and that had real meaning, but had no place any longer in their lives. That sounds rather dramatic. I was thinking, and like a aside, I see a question already came up. So my wife had a very large Judaic library, and since we also had the books at home, she wanted to give them away. Nobody wants them anymore. These beautiful Talmuds and Sidurim and Rambam and nobody needs them because everybody goes online. So once they have one volume in their library, let's say a synagogue, but even rabbinic students weren't interested. Like they have no room. So, and they can go online so easily. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking, maybe again, even to think, also more of what do you do? What did you experience of somebody that this was a wedding gift? This was their a set of, they got so many photos, their boxes and boxes of photos or mementos that they had from their parents and grandparents. What do you do?
Yeah, so this is the meat and potatoes of letting go, is how do you possibly overcome the crushing feeling of nostalgia, which, I'm a human being. Full disclosure, my mother very sadly passed away 8 months ago. And to say that there are objects in the home, that I can't imagine being without is an understatement. So I too am not only preaching this or teaching this, but I am living this right now. But what you do is we have discussions. So I don't come into a client's home and just preach minimalism and say, sorry, you've been with these things for 40 years. It's time to give it up. Or sorry, everything is online now. No need for this. People who hire me have hired many other people before they bring me in who have done that, who just kind of come in with this very, very, big approach and quick and fast and hurried approach, which is don't need this, time to let it go. And that's obviously going to get the job done, but not in a very emotionally supportive way. And I would say that the way that I bring this to people has a lot of staying power because I allow you to talk about the meaning. So if I were working with you or your wife, I would talk about the ways in which, all of these beautiful Sfarim have served you and have served, the community. And you want to give people a chance to feel validated. There's time for validation in the process, and then there's time for, tachlis, for if you are going to be moving from a 3-story house into a 2-bedroom apartment, something has to give, right? Items have to be let go. So this is obviously a much broader, deeper conversation. But to answer your question succinctly, I would say that the way you do it is by giving air and time and space to people's feelings and emotions that they have for these things. And once you allow people to talk about either the person who's in these pictures or the person who gave them these items or the years that they spent poring over these books as a doctor or whatever, it softens the attachment in a way so that they can let it go because they're left with understanding that all of these possessions and the connection and what they embody, it still lives within them.
I assume you've actually experienced tears in doing this. Do you have any story like of how you dealt with, somebody who's just crying and feeling loss? Do you have a story? What did you say? What did you do?
Yeah. So no one has been completely, they haven't lost it completely in front of me, but they've cried. And what I do is simply give them space to cry. It really comes back, I think, to the same, and this is, I think, where healthcare and being a provider came in very handy, is you have to give people respect and grace to feel their feelings. So I didn't, rush in to interject, but I let people tell me a story. I let people tell me a story. Does it take time? Yes, it takes time. But when you allow people, I mean, if you allow people to tell their stories, it calms them, it soothes them, and it kind of gives them the space to process. And I think, if we had a lot more time, we could talk about what are the different stages of processing. And I actually have 2 presentations, kind of a nuts and bolts of how do you actually learn to let go, and also how do you learn to navigate the process of letting go of possessions from a deceased loved one. But it comes down to you have to give people time and space. And I think people appreciate that. If someone were doing this process with me and I picked something up from my beloved mother, I wouldn't want to just have them say, "Oh, I'm sure this brings back a lot of memories," and then move on. I would probably want to talk about my mother and talk about these particular vases that she has in her green room, and what that means to me and what it meant to her. And I could even feel, talking about it now, how that lessens the burden and the difficulty of letting go.
And I saw another question came in. You can say deflect on this if you want. of something very different and something that we have. So we have 4 kids, and they're all married. They all have their own places. They have their own kids. And they said to us, well, we don't have enough room in our place, so we're going to store our things in your house. And if we want to downsize, how do we tell our kids, like, you have to make choices on this? We're going to make them for you. If you had that as well, where they've downsized and
Yes.
they've got their kid stuff there.
Yes. So there was a client who didn't have a problem getting rid of their stuff. They had a problem getting rid of their kids' stuff. They had told their kids repeatedly, guys, mommy and I are thinking about doing this and whatever. We can you make a time to come and whatever. And people sort of drag their feet. So what you have to do is just what you said, which is make, be very clear. We need to move. This is our timeline. We would love to be able to put the agency in your hands so that you can determine what of these childhood things of yours you want to take back into your house. And unfortunately, if we want to work with you, let's pick a time to do it. But we need to have it done by X amount of time. I mean, the point is, don't throw it all out, but just be very clear with your children. And obviously, I'm no stranger to the fact that people can have very complex relationships and fraught relationships with their children, and that sometimes people can't simply call up and say, "Hi, honey, can you come over and can we figure out a time? Can you fly?" Sometimes there's estrangement, and so as you will see with family units, things are not always cut and dry and not always simple. And if I were to be working with a family that had this type of situation, we would talk it through. I mean, my allegiance is to the client and I have to help them. So if they say, this is a no-go, I can't speak to my children, we would take it from there. But yes, to answer your question, I see that all the time. My father actually is in a 4-bedroom house, and he and my mother lived there. I think he told me this morning since 1973. Okay, so 5 decades or so, 52 years, whatever. And they raised 4 children, and there's plenty of room to just house everything for everybody, including, friends from Israel's kids or whatever. It's like a way station. But at some point, now is not that time, but at some point, yes, we have to go over, and we're adults, we have to make the decisions.
And I'm also thinking again about stories. So you've gone through this process, and the people have actually, with you, done the hard work, and it's over. Have you had regrets, people who are feeling a sense of death, of loss, as a result, even though they
Right.
made the decisions, but is there something to say to them to console?
It's actually a beautiful question because it touches on the human, like the humanity, the fragility of the process and of people, and that you can give a lot of time and nurturance to people through the process, and yet even at the other side, it hurts. It's hard, right? Because if you think about it just from a numbers perspective, you can have a relationship with, I don't know, a collection, whatever, Merriam-Webster's dictionary or something like that, or whatever it is, or Tanakh or so, whatever it may be. You can have a 40-year relationship with something, and even though you've done the work to kind of let it go and feel okay about it, there's probably going to be a residual feeling that's hard to sit with. And so I never had someone say, "Oh my God, I can't believe we let that go. I actually need it or I really want it." And the reason is because the process that I'm going through them with is very intentional and it's not quick. So it's not like we're just chucking things left and right in a bag. We're really talking through it. But what I tell them when they're feeling these things is, it's okay. This is normal. Letting go is very, very hard. And I think the nostalgia piece is real. I mean, if you didn't feel anything, that would kind of be interesting to me, right? If you didn't feel anything for any of the possessions you've had, or for your child's, tiny shoes when they were 2, that would kind of strike me
Or
as
the paintings that you
the
saved,
scribbles
or
and the
the
scratch.
birthday cards.
Exactly.
Right.
How do you let go of that? And just to say, I mean, who am I to say, who am I to tell somebody what's important, right? You know what's important. And the people whom you serve know what's important to them. I think the issue is helping them figure that out, what is important and what really they can let go of. But yeah, you have to bring humanity and patience to it. That's what the process is. And that's the only way you're going to have a successful process.
So we've talked about and uh, in the active aging conversations that we've talked about traditions. We have traditions, we have sacred moments that are so powerful for us. Birth ceremonies, bar and bat mitzvah, or weddings.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, I mentioned to Tamar, in Europe, there was this tradition that when boys, of course, and then it was boys, started cheder, they would have a book. They would have aleph bet on it. They put honey on it that the kids could lick so they would feel the sweetness. Um, and then, wait a moment, after your wedding, the next event that's yours, meaning, of course, you may have children and all, but the next event that's yours is your death and the ceremonies around death. But really, between weddings and your dying, there are no rituals for you. There can be rituals for your children, even God willing for your grandchildren and now great grandchildren, but there aren't those for you. And we at the Active Aging Resource Network, we've really thinking a lot about that. I know that there are ceremonies I have heard about. For example, there's a ceremony for a kid who gets his or her driver's license. And how do you make that a moment, or going off to college, or where unfortunately there's a divorce and there's a ritual around perhaps the each of the people getting divorced go to a mikveh and go through, but we haven't concretized those. So have you thought about, or have you witnessed in any of your work, rituals, traditions, actions, something that we could put into a Jewish lens? And I want to mention, by the way, for all of you that Rabbis Laura Geller and Beth Lieberman, they have a book, and maybe Laura can take a moment to describe it, on reimagining rituals. The book is called Moments That Matter. And you may want to take a note of that, uh, because they very consciously began to think, well, you've got decades and decades. So this is a liminal moment. And is there a way to make it a meaningful, a ritual, even a Jewish moment?
Yeah.
David, I'm happy to explain one of the rituals in the book that is about decluttering whenever you want me to.
Sure, go ahead right now. That's fine. That's great.
So here's the book. I don't know if you can see it. It's called Moments That Matter. And there's a chapter called Decluttering or Downsizing Your Home. And it asks you to do much of what Tamar is talking about, but in the presence of people for whom this matters, you and if you have kids or family or whatever. The materials that the ritual can take place whenever you give things away. It can happen over a period of time, or when you're thinking about downsizing or cleaning your house out for a move. You invite the people to whom you'd like to leave your stuff, even though they may not want it. You need a camera with a video function. The person who is decluttering or preparing to move begins by saying, I have in my home treasures that matter to me. They connect me to people I love, to memories that have shaped the person I have become. While I'd love to have those treasures be part of your homes now, I know that is not what you want. And as much as I love having these treasures, especially the ones that were in the home of my grandparents, parents, beloved friends, what really matters to me is not the object, but the person connected to it. I invite you to walk with me around the house so I can tell you their stories, take a photograph of each treasure, and tell you what I know about its history and about the person who gave it to me. I hope you will share with me any associations you have with this piece or with the person connected. Next, do exactly that. Walk around the house. Talk about the items in your home that have meaning and record your stories for posterity. End with these words. With gratitude for the abundance of my life, I honor those who came before me and those who will come after me as I move forward into the future with less baggage.
Beautiful.
And then in the book, there are stories, very short stories of people who have done rituals. And I posted some other places where people can look for rituals. One is Ritual Well, and another is the Jewish Women's Archive. There's a lovely blog written by a granddaughter as her grandmother departed. So there are rituals out there.
That's great. Thank you, Lauren. Really, again, the book is Moments That Matter, and it's worth grabbing that. You mentioned photos, and I was thinking about digitizing. Tragically, Shira's brother's home was burned to the ground in Pacific Palisades, and as a result, Shira decided just to walk around the house with with her camera, with her phone, and just taking photos all around the house as a means of remembering. Because I think, as Laura said, and Tamar, in the same way, maybe you don't have the object, but is there a way that your great grandchildren could actually experience something of your life, or something that had meaning?
Yes. So first of all, Rabbi Geller, thank you so much. I read that whole chapter. David sent it to me, and it's beautiful. And I just want to point out there was some beautiful text by Rabbi Michael Howald. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly, but really, really beautiful. So I recommend that everyone get the book and read that. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Yeah, so gosh, there are a lot of different avenues to go here. I mean, and I'm happy to talk to anybody after this presentation on a one-to-one basis about creating and structuring ritual or presentations for your different communities, because there are so many avenues that you can go down, bringing Judaism in and putting a Jewish lens on this. And I wrote some things down. It was actually fun to kind of to see what was out there. But just with this question of digitizing, and there's also another question that came up on the chat. Yeah, a lot of clients want to do just that. They want to take pictures of everything. And one thing I would say about this is that because these items are not my items, I'm removed, and I have a great measure of objectivity. And so what I want to tell people is to be careful, because when you're letting go and decluttering and downsizing, you have a lot of projects on your plate. You have to get through a lot. And you want to be careful what other projects you're taking on. So I remind people who say, "Oh, I'm in the middle of this thing. I can't let go of that," that. And so they have so many different projects that they've started, and it becomes more overwhelming. And so what I try and help people do is figure out, like, are the hours that you're going to put into this, is it worth it? What is it going to feel like to have, 560 new photos to manage? Because whatever you have in your home or what you have in your phone, you have to manage. This is the basic principle that I always teach to people, which is, even if you think, oh, out of sight, out of mind, I have 20 boxes in my attic or 30 boxes in my basement, it doesn't bother me. That's not true. Even on a subconscious level, right? Whatever we have in our home, we are managing both physically with our space and emotionally, because we kind of know it's there and we're unsettled about it. So if you want to digitize, great. But just be aware that you're kind of taking on and bringing in more, so to speak. But that said, if this is a way that enables you to throw out a lot of physical photos that you don't need, go for it. And the other question that came in was about selling valuable items. So there are professionals who do just that. There are obviously estate sales and estate plans and estate planners and things like that. There are auction houses, and there are a lot of people out there who are happy to come in. And you obviously want to get someone who knows what he or she is talking about and can appraise things appropriately. But yes, there's a difference between throwing out a whole bunch of, cracked, broken items that are unfit for use, as opposed to, a beautiful set of china or a set of candlesticks, you know what I mean, from 18th century, whatever, 19th century. So you want to be careful about what professionals you bring in, but it's not the Wild West out there. There are certainly people for whom this is what they do day in and day out.
Also, I'm thinking donating can be very meaningful as well. If you have things, we had so many baby blankets that people had actually made for us. And I remember, I can see the face of the person who crocheted the baby blankets and Shira's decision to give them away where we know they're going to be used for other babies felt very meaningful. Certainly felt very meaningful as well. So now I'm thinking, Barbara Meyerhoff wrote a book years ago, a stunning book called Number Our Days. And she described a group of elderly, this was a long time ago. So basically these were all European born older people at a senior citizens center in Santa Monica or Venice, California. And what she did was she had people write stories, stories of their life. And I remember this woman who said, "Me, I have nothing to tell. I have no story to tell." And then she said, "But as she wrote and tried this practice of writing, people bubbled up and came alive to her once again."
Mm-hmm.
So that was at a Jewish senior citizen setting. But I'm thinking now about synagogues. Most synagogues, our experience, Stuart and I, when we did our research, most synagogues would have lots of programs for children, teenagers. They'd have programs for families. And then they would have programs for seniors, like single, widowed. But once you get like people 60, 65, 70, there wasn't anything specific for them. So I'm thinking, if you're a synagogue now and having listened to you, or you're a JCC that runs different programs, or even you're a Hadassah chapter, or you're a Jewish family service, can you imagine things that they could do? Granted, Tamar is a businesswoman. She'd be more than happy. You can get her. We'll put her info into the chat. If you're interested in her. But we're talking all across the country here to so many people. Can you imagine things that any of these institutions could do?
Recording in progress.
Yes. So there are one-off programs that could be done, bringing in people for an afternoon to talk about just the act of decluttering, or, if you need to downsize, come and listen, 45 minutes to the ABCs, of downsizing and decluttering. Those are kind of the logistical, technical details. And I think that places that I've spoken at, the response has been really overwhelming because so many people are going through this. And it's like we keep on saying, it can be very overwhelming. It can be emotionally fraught. People just need some direction. You could also, though, and this is what I really was enjoying looking into, making this about, from a Jewish lens, what does Judaism have to say about our relationship to possessions and about how we can age with our possessions and with our material goods and what happens when we reach a certain stage in life. And I just want to share some things. You had mentioned, David, that, and this is so beautiful, so simple, but the act of decluttering, you can frame it for people not as an act that embodies such great loss because you're giving up, but it's actually an opportunity to fulfill the mitzvah of tzedakah, like you were saying with those baby blankets. I mean, think of how that completely changes the act that you're doing and making it into a beautiful grand gesture. These items have served me so beautifully. Now it's time. They've served me well. Now it's time to hand it to somebody else. It's a beautiful opportunity. And to do that, times 100, right? There's another way to look at it. It's, the Jewish lens of we are not all about our material possessions. We want to aspire to be spiritual beings. And so that can, for some people, soften the very strong attachment, to our possessions and make it so that we're more about our spiritual welfare, family welfare, community welfare, stripping down life to the essence, to the basics, which is about connection and interpersonal relationships, relationships between people, not necessarily relationships between us and inanimate objects. I also came across something that really resonated with me. I'm just looking here at a note, which is the notion of stewardship, and that we don't actually own our possessions, right? The universe, God, is the ultimate owner and possessor. And we are simply stewards of these pieces, whether it's something as simple as furniture or sfarim or whatever it is. We steward it through our lives. And then I wrote here, decluttering and downsizing is not discarding our own property, but rather reallocating God's resources to where they are most needed. I thought that was so beautiful. And so to answer your question, you can create programs that really model or that speak about these different elements of Jewish values and kind of link the steps of letting go to these Jewish values of tzedakah and tikkun olam and stewardship, like stewarding the land, the notion of shmita. It is not our land, it's God's land, and we are given it, to steward throughout our lives, and we give it its time of rest. So it also ties in the notion of kind of like Kohelet, there is a time for everything, right? There's a time to be attached, there's a time to be served by things, and then there's a time to let go and a time to pass it along.
We have a tradition that says you should be saying 100 brachot a day, 100 blessings. And it's kind of the other side of that is if you don't have 100 reasons to say a blessing in the course of a day, it's as if you're not alive. So one of the things, and I'm not asking Tamar to do this, but as a community, we could consider is what would be a bracha? And Laura, I'm not putting this directly on you, but literally a bracha that would feel like elevate a moment of sacredness. Asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav. So Tamar is saying by giving things away and doing good, that's Asher Kiddeshanu, making sacred, making meaningful according to our tradition. What would be a bracha or what would be brachot that we could imagine? That's one thing I'm thinking of. One of the things that Stuart and I found, we got into this because of a book by Mark Friedman, Encore, about people who are retiring in their 60s, 70s, and instead of retiring and moving to I'm not knocking this, but moving to a gated community to play tennis and be isolated in a sense, but actually to re-engage and take on a role. And somebody noted that by decluttering, you may give yourself some space in your house to do something. I have a ceramic studio in my house, so I picked up ceramics after my kids all left home. I returned to something I had done when I was very young, or music, or poetry reading or book clubs. In other words, to also refocus yourself. It's so the letting go of things can be replaced by doing meaningful things.
Yeah, that is a brilliant point, because that is the essence of what cluttering, what downsizing, what letting go gifts us in return, which is exactly what you said. And this is just physics. When you take things out of space, right, there's more space to have something come in. Or maybe that's osmosis or something, but like things travel, right, from a place of very cluttered to a place of freedom and space. No, it's diffusion, sorry. I think. So that's exactly what we're talking about. Most of my clients, believe it or not, are not leaving their home. They want to reimagine and recreate their space. They're saying, this is a beautiful place. I can't physically manage the things, and I can't physically make my way from point A to point B. And so they've almost forgotten the possibility of their own home and their own space. And so when people let go, they can reimagine their space. And what happens when you let go of things that don't serve you is the good stuff, the meaningful stuff, bubbles to the surface. That's what happens, because the meaningful stuff never leaves us. It's here. But like with anything, if there's too much noise and too much, it gets squelched, it gets repressed, it gets put down, and it needs space to breathe. And I actually just want to tie this in for a moment to the notion of mikdash me'at, which I had forgotten, a small sanctuary, that our house is like an actual small sanctuary, and the divine lives in our house. So how are we supposed to, enjoy our divine space if there's too much stuff, and if we're carrying around this feeling of being overwhelmed or unhappy or stuck? We need to let go in order to make it a divine space for ourselves. Some people might say for God, so that we can honor the divine. But I want to suggest that we also owe it to ourselves. You owe it to yourself to live in a home that speaks to you, that feels comfortable, and that enables you to live the kind of life you want to live.
This is great. Laura mentioned, and that's just a really simple thing. Synagogues, rabbis. I'm the husband of a rabbi. I know, get called for all different moments in life. Certainly a divorce, a family falling apart, a death, obviously, someone in the hospital. But Laura noted, why can't there be a way for people to communicate that they're going to be moving, they're going to be downsizing, in which case the community, the synagogue, the JCC, an organization, a women's group, a reading, a book club, that they could announce that as well. And to Laura's point, that people could be part of it, and that people who are going through that process can actually come together and talk to each other and be supportive and give ideas. So it's a way of imagining now, in that phase of life that we're talking about. In most cases, we're really talking, a 45-year-old that moves with their kids to a nicer home or a different city. That's not what I'm sure they have to deal with stuff too, but it's not the same thing. But we're really talking about people who are moving to make their lives seem smaller, but actually to share that together. So I really think institutionally we should take this very seriously. There's no reason there can't be a group, there can't be a committee, there can't be people designated at the institution, the synagogue, the JCC, to be out on the outlook for this. Seth mentioned, thank you, Seth Sender mentioned Havdalah as an example, as a model. That's a really lovely model. Havdalah being Kodesh L'chol, from separating from the holiness of Sabbath to the weekday. But in a sense, on a holiday, when you move in a holiday from Shabbat to the holiday, You don't say being kodesh l'chol, you say being kodesh l'kodesh, from one sacred moment to another. So Havdalah, we can imagine you're moving from one sacred moment, the Mikdash Ma'at, the small sacred space of that's not the temple in Jerusalem, but our home. But you're moving to another place that can be sacred as well. So there could be a ritual, for example, for taking down a mezuzah, if you're going to take it down, that has deep meaning for you, or mezuzot if it's on more than one door. A ceremony for taking it down. Who do you want in that? As Laura said, who do you want in that room with you when you're doing that, knowing that you're going to affix it someplace else? So you're taking that piece of your life with you. We're coming very close to the end. Do you have one more story? Just a moving story. I'm sorry, it's putting Tamar on the spot. Like, do you have one moving story that stands with you after all this time?
I do. So it's the client I'm working with now. It's a little bit different than what we've been talking about. She doesn't have her own family unit. She is a single woman in her 70s. She has a greater family unit, but a single woman in her 70s who was a professional for decades, very successful, living in the New York metro area. And I got a call from a family member. This woman is an actual hoarder, which I would say is 0.1% of my clients. Usually hoarders, they don't want me there. They're very happy with the status quo. But their family member brought me in, and this woman also has Alzheimer's. So it is a very sensitive, sort of emotionally precarious situation working with this woman. So this is a very moving story because this woman is very connected to Judaism, but because she has Alzheimer's and she needs to be moved into an assisted living facility now, she really has kind of had to withdraw. She can't really go out anymore, and she is missing her Jewish community and her Jewish roots. And she has many articles, Judaica things in her home and stuff like that. And it's been a very humbling process because on the one hand, I'm kind of taking the direction and directives from her family members that care about her, and not from her directly, because if it were left to her, she wouldn't want to let go of anything. But we're doing this kind of looking at her as someone who needs a lot of help and who needs to be supported and who needs to be looked after and cared for by others. And yet, 98% of the work I'm doing with her. And so we found a way to, for me to respect what she is capable of leading and what she is capable of telling me she wants and she needs, while also shepherding her through this process. And what she wants to take with her, it's very interesting. So some of the Judaic pieces that really somehow speak to her and herself that was from before, her pre-Alzheimer's self, that self is very, very alive. And she wants to take a lot of the Judaica pieces with her. She wants to take her Judaism with her. And, ultimately, this was a process of kind of working with her to understand what letting go means, but also meeting her where she's at and really coming down to the very basics of how we deal with people, which is with grace and with respect and with patience. And I think I've learned from her that this process is possible, even though there are some cognitive obstacles and cognitive challenges. And I guess what's heartening about it is that in the end, she's very close to being moved. In the end, I like to think of her as being surrounded, not with, massive piles of things from 1970, which, if I may say, I don't think was serving her, but that she'll be surrounded by the pieces that still connect her and who she is now to what matters to her, which is to family, community, and to her religion.
Tamar, when I imagined us doing this I didn't imagine it would be so great. I'm really so grateful. It's something that I had not thought about at all. I don't think that Stuart and I thought about it before before you um before you told me about it. And I think it is a wonderful gift to bring to the Jewish community and to bring Laura, you've been at the forefront of thinking this Jewishly as well. So I'm really grateful, Tamar, for your doing this. And Stuart, this is good. Back to you.
Actually, I did think about it because there's too much stuff around, and I don't want to leave it for others to take care of. So this really did resonate. Let me first thank you, Tamar, for a terrific session. Really deep thanks for spending time with us on this. And I just want to mention to everybody, tamarprager.com. You can look more closely at Tamar's work and the brilliance of how she approaches this. This program has been recorded. We will send it out to everyone on our list, and we will post it on our website, so you'll be able to see it
And
or
share it, and Stuart, and
with
to share it where
Yeah.
you are with your synagogue, your JCC, your group, to share it because it's a good learning.
So let me close with an announcement that we will reconvene with another convening in February. We'll be talking with the Shomer Collective. If you know the group, they deal with end of life planning and programs. And I actually really deeply believe that that program is connected to this program because in both cases, it's about taking control of our lives at this stage in our lives. And we're very proud to be working with Melanie Lavav and the team there. We'll be back to you and we'll share information about timing. It'll be in February. I also want to extend thanks to Don Dubois and Ariane Pelletier of the Marlene Mayerson JCC of Manhattan. Don handled the tech today flawlessly. It was fabulous, and Ariane is our partner in helping us along the way. So we really appreciate that. Final comment, please take a look at our website at activeagingnetwork.org. There's a directory there. I'm proud to say Tamar is a recent listee on that. Sounds like listeria. On the directory, you can find colleagues who are dealing with the issues you're dealing with, who may have hit the bumps in the road that you may have found, or may have found answers that you could benefit from. And that's really what we're trying to do here, David and I. We not only want to help people take control of the aging process, but we want Jewish organizations throughout the Jewish community to take control as well, to provide resources and inspiration. And if we did and help that process today, we've accomplished our task. So thank you to everybody. Happy to see you. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Hey, hold on 1 second. I think I'm gonna get out of this.